Okay, students, so this is lecture number 2 regarding the course Literary Criticism and Theory. And the topic for today's lecture is Introduction to Life and Works of Aristotle and His Philosophies. So let's begin. Moving towards the outline of today's lecture, first of all, we'll discuss about Aristotle's life, then Aristotle's logic, then Aristotle's metaphysics, Aristotle's philosophy of nature, the soul and psychology, Aristotle's ethics, Aristotle's politics, Aristotle's arts and poetics. So let's first begin with Aristotle's life. Among the pioneers of human knowledge, Aristotle was undoubtedly the greatest. His philosophy included almost all the sciences and humanities such as logics, mathematics, physics, biology and psychology, metaphysics and ethics, politics and aesthetics. His range was encyclopedic, original as well as creative. His influence in philosophy surpassed even that of his master Plato. His position in the history of philosophy is unique. Aristotle was undoubtedly master of those who know. Discussing more about Aristotle's life, he was the student of Plato, who in turn studied under Socrates, as we have discussed in lecture number 1 as well. He was more empirically minded than Plato or Socrates and is famous for rejecting Plato's theories of form. We will discuss about the Plato's theories of forms as well in the coming lectures. As a prolific writer and polymath, Aristotle radically transformed most, if not all, areas of knowledge he touched. It is no wonder that Aquinas referred to him simply as the philosopher. In his lifetime, Aristotle wrote as many as 200 books, of only which 331 survived. Aristotle was the first to classify the areas of human knowledge into distinct disciplines such as mathematics, biology, and ethics. Some of these classifications are still used today. As the father of the field of logic, he was the first to develop a formalized system of reasoning. Aristotle observed that the validity of any argument can be determined by its structure rather than its content. A classic example of a valid argument is his syllogism: all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Discussing more about Aristotle's life, he was born in 384 BCE at Stagirus, a now extinct Greek colony and seaport on the coast of Thrace. His father Nicomachus was a court physician to King Amyntas, and from this began Aristotle's long association with the court, which considerably influenced his life. While he was still a boy, his father died. At the age of 17, his guardian, Proxenus, sent him to Athens, the intellectual center of the world, to complete his education. He joined the academy and studied under Plato, attending his lectures for a period of 20 years. Talking about Aristotle's writings, the works of Aristotle fall under three headings: dialogues and other works of a popular character; secondly, collection of facts and the materials from the scientific treatment; and the third is systematic works. Among his writings of a popular nature, the only one which we possess of any consequence is the interesting tract on the polity of the Athenians. And it is reported that Aristotle's writings were held by his student Theophrastus, who had succeeded Aristotle in the leadership of the school. Now we are moving towards Aristotle's logic. Aristotle's writings on the general subject of logic were grouped by the later Peripatetics under this name organon, or the instrument. This terminology organon refers to the word instrument, From their perspective, logic and reasoning was the chief preparatory instrument of scientific investigation. Aristotle himself, however, uses the term logic as equivalent to the verbal reasoning. So over here, the term organon is referring to the instrument for the scientific investigation that refers to the logic and reasoning, and over here it is equivalent to the verbal reasoning. Now moving towards Aristotle's metaphysics. Aristotle's editors gave the name metaphysics to his works on the first philosophy, either because they were beyond or followed after his physical investigations. Aristotle began by sketching the history of philosophy. For Aristotle, philosophy arose historically after basic necessities were secured. It grew out of a feeling of curiosity and wonder to which religious myths gave only provisional satisfaction. Okay, students, moving towards the next slide, that is Aristotle's philosophy of nature. Aristotle sees the universe as a scale lying between the two extremes. Form without matter is one end, and matter without form is on the other end. The passage of matter into form must be shown into its various stages in the world of nature. To do this is the object of Aristotle's physics or philosophy of nature. It is important to keep in mind that the passage from form to matter within nature is movement towards end or purposes. Everything in nature has its end and function. Nothing is without its purpose. Everywhere we find evidences of design and rational plan. Moving towards the next slide, that is regarding Aristotle's soul and psychology. Soul is defined by Aristotle as the perfect expression or realization of a natural body. From this definition, it follows that there is a close connection between psychological states and physiological processes. Body and soul are unified in the same way that wax and an impression stamped on it are unified. Moving towards some other philosophies of Aristotle, Aristotle's So first of all, talking about Aristotle's ethics, ethics as viewed by Aristotle is an attempt to find out chief end or the highest good, an end which he maintains is really final, though many ends of life are only means to further ends. Our inspirations and desires must have some final object or pursuit, such as chief end is universally called happiness, but people mean such different things by the expression that he find it necessary to discuss the nature for itself. Moving towards Aristotle's politics. Aristotle does not regard politics as a separate science from ethics, but as the completion and almost a verification of it. The moral ideal in political administration is only a different aspect of that which also applies to individual happiness. Humans are by nature social beings, and the possession of rational speech logos in itself leads us to the social union. Then moving towards Aristotle's arts and politics. Art is defined by Aristotle as a realization in external form of a true idea and is traced back to the natural love of imitation which characterizes humans and to the pleasure which we feel in the recognition likeness. Art, however, is not limited to mere copying. It idealizes nature and completes its deficiencies. It seeks to grasp the universal type in the individual phenomena. So this is all about Plato's philosophies. We have discussed about the Plato's life, his works, and we have discussed about his philosophies one by one. We have discussed about his logic, Aristotle's metaphysics, Aristotle's philosophy of nature, the soul and psychology, Aristotle ethics, Aristotle politics, Aristotle's art and poetics. Now we are going to discuss about Aristotle's forms, as he has denied the concept of Plato's forms and he has given his own concept regarding the form. So let's discuss it one by one. In the first principle, Aristotle believed that each piece of matter has a universal and particular properties. In the second principle, he believed that form of things, the universal properties of object remain constant and never change, but the particular components do change. So he was of the view that universal properties they do not change, but the particular component that comprises that object they can change. In the third principle, he believed that designs and order are present in the universe and all things happen in an orderly fashion. In the fourth principle, he believed that there are three aspects of the soul called vegetative, animative, and rational. So, vegetative over here refers to the growth that each thing is under the process of growth. Animative means that each form is having the animated properties, and then rational. They do have the rational mind. Do have the properties to think rationally. In the fifth rule, he did not separate matter from its universal being. And the sixth principle is Aristotle's belief is the matter is always in the process and moving to some ends. The final principle is his belief of the chief good, which is happiness. So this is all about Plato's belief in terms of the universal properties and the particular components in terms of the form. Now let's discuss about Plato's views about women. Plato's views on women influenced later Western thinkers. He saw women as subject to man, but as higher than slaves. In chapter 12 of his Politics, he writes, "The slave is wholly lacking the deliberative element. The female has it, but it lacks authority. The child has it, but it is incomplete." Okay, students, now let me tell you about the Aristotle's method of teaching. He has used in his life the deductive method and inductive method to teach. For example, all men by nature desire knowledge. The education differs from the uneducated as much as the living from the dead. The roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweeter. The one exclusive sign of though knowledge is the power of teachings, and education is the best provision for old age. These were all the views of Aristotle in terms of education, and the way he has explained all the concepts is by using two methods, deductive and inductive reasoning, where we move from general to specific and specific to general particularly, respectively. Now let me explain the Aristotle theory of education. Aristotle agrees with Plato on the division of Greek education into stages corresponding with level and years of schooling. He disapproves with Plato's communism in education. In the communism system, every individual is molded in a single pattern. Aristotle is of the opinion that any individual in the state should be given opportunity to develop his talent to the full without any impediment to his progress, without anchorship on the type of the books he reads or the opinions he holds. Aristotle believed that since state is an organic unit, and since that state is to be ruled by men who have been brought, though education to a vision of the true form of highest goodness. He saw education as the true form of the highest goodness. So this is all about Plato's theories, his philosophies, his concepts about teaching, education, goodness. So we have discussed about Plato, Aristotle in detail. So in the next lecture, we are going to have some further discussion about their theories. So this is all about today's lecture. Thank you so very much.